Good afternoon. I'm Stephan Jost, the Michael and Sonja Koerner Director and CEO of the Art Gallery of Ontario, and I'd like to welcome you all today for this Zoom chat we're having. We like to begin these by acknowledging that the AGO is on the traditional territory of the Mississauga of the New Credit and has been on the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Haudenosaunee through time. Before I start today's chat, and I want to welcome Nathalie Bondil, the Director General and Chief Curator of the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts in the fabulous city of Montreal, I do want to give a couple little housekeeping things about today's conversation. We've had an extraordinary response. I was hoping for 100 people, but 1,000 plus people have signed up. So I really want to welcome everybody who's in the audience. I was so nervous that people might not show up. I even called my mother in Michigan. So I want to welcome Monique Yost to this conversation as well. Next Thursday at 4 o'clock, please join us again if you like this format. Glenn Lowry, the director of the Museum of Modern Art in New York, will be in a conversation with me next Thursday at 4 o'clock. Today's format is really simple. Nathalie and I will chat for 30 minutes. Then we will have Kathleen, who's on the AGO staff, moderate some questions. She'll put some questions up for us to answer for another 10 minutes. We'll be all done in 40 minutes, and that means that you have 20 minutes to prepare cocktails if you have a 5 o'clock cocktail hour. If there's something we can do better, just let us know. We're obviously experimenting. We're trying to figure out how to engage people and make art and culture and museums relevant in this period. So if we can do it better, let us know. So now I want to welcome the fabulous Nathalie Bondil to this conversation. Welcome to Toronto.
Yes, welcome, fabulous Stephan. I'm very happy to participate to this chat. It's a great initiative, by the way. So I really want to applaud your invitation.
We've got a great team, and behind the scenes is Danny, who's in charge of all the technology. So that kind of helps us as well. Got a really easy question. What is your motto? If you're going to say, this is Nathalie, what is your motto? What's your motto?
Oh, well, my motto would be carpe diem, you know, donc carpe diem, just enjoy the day, day after day. And I think it's perfect, especially now with these health issues, for which remember that we are facing death and for so many people. So I think that it's just fabulous just to be in life and to be surrounded by beauty and to work with artists and to live with art also. So for me, it's a great, just to have this possibility to be inspired by beauty on my daily life is really a great tool for joy and happiness.
I think it's important to remember during these harder times that joy, there's a reason worth living, and beauty is one of those things that makes it worthwhile.
I agree, and I always am so happy because I remember that one of the best decisions in my life had been to decide to be an art historian and just to work in a museum, and there is no one day without I'm thinking that I'm so lucky, so privileged to work in a museum because I'm paid for working in a museum, and people don't pay for going to the museum. So I think it's...
Do you remember the day you decided to be an art historian?
In fact, I was just interested by travels, I was really curious. So I wanted to be an archaeologist or anthropologist or ethnologist. So but, step by step, I became very interested by art. I did not have a specific, I was really passionate by sculptures because really my passion, my interest.
What's the first sculpture you remember seeing and being touched by?
I think that it was an exhibition I saw. I was in Paris on the 19th century sculpture, and I'm very loyal with this first passion because I'm still specialized in this field. And I kept all my friends with Anne Pinjot. You know, she's the former wife of François Mitterrand and the mother of Mazarine, and she was my one of my teachers. She's a fantastic woman. So I've been very privileged to meet great people. They really invented this new field of 19th century sculpture for Orsay. So I did.
So you've had really good mentors throughout your career.
Yeah, definitely, yes. Great mentors.
I find that's a common thread of almost every museum director who's managed to kind of, do the job, is they almost always have had really great mentors. But
what is your mentor?
Oh, my mentor, easy. A man named Morrison Heckscher. Maury Heckscher. I met him when I was 18 or 19. I interned at the Metropolitan Museum, and he's a specialist in American decorative arts. And I do have a soft spot for decorative arts, but really he has become a fantastic friend, and he's one of those people who's done enough in his life to actually be wise. He can really see things clearly.
So, and in fact, it's interesting for sculpture. Donc, the curators are very, very tight. Yes, we still keep our very strong link, and we are friends.
Yeah.
And so, for me, and I still collect works.
You still collect personally. How do you find works of art for your personal collection?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
I'm crazy. Frankly, yes, it's much better that I work for a museum, because I'm really crazy with works of art. For example, I had a kind of insomnia last night. I don't know why, frankly. Now I don't know why, but no. So I just opened my computer and I was looking for sculptures doing art. Donc on eBay, on Interenchère, auction site, etc. So I have my.
I love live auction. Live Auctioneers is a website, but it takes all the regional auction houses and puts the material on view. And you can type in words like, I love 19th century photography. So I can type in albumen, which is a 19th century photographic process. And often the things that I'm interested in will come up, right? And I almost never buy, but I love looking.
It's the same thing, yeah. So I like this hunt.
Yeah.
I think that a good art historian is a good hunter. So it's always what I say to my the curators. I say to just be good hunter.
Right.
So the hunt for loans, hunt for acquisitions, hunt for funds, and it's a game. It's fun, by the way.
Yeah. And there's a public benefit. Often extraordinary collections get built that way.
Yeah.
So in this kind of last 6 weeks, to full disclosure, Nathalie and I have been in regular conversation. I think we've been working really hard just to figure out how to move forward and how to keep the museums that we work at together. One of the things I've found is it's made my sense of what I value. My values have become much sharper. Like, I care about that, I don't care about that, right? Has that happened to you as well?
Oh, definitely. It's true that we exchange a lot, and I just want to say to the public that I have a strong link with you, Stephan, because we are leading same type of museum. Because of course now we are facing the same issues with cash flow, etc. So it's not exactly the same when you discuss with people from the Louvre and from the Orsay. Donc,
you have the French state behind it, right?
Exactly. So the state just absorbed the deficit. And it's the same, partly the same with the National Museum in Quebec or in Ottawa. You see. So of course they are facing issues. So I'm not saying that it's easy for them. But the feeling of emergency is not at all the same, because you and I were just we have this problem. How we will pay next month our employees? So how can we avoid to lay them off? And this is why we did exchange a lot. And I must say that our discussions were very inspiring for me, because I adopt a system which is rather similar of what you are doing right now.
We did, and I'm incredibly honored that Nathalie has managed to basically take it and move it through, because the goal is to keep institutions intact during this period. And so at the AGO, what happened is basically the federal wage subsidy is helping cover some of the costs. The entire staff took a 25% pay cut, which is incredibly humbling.
Mm.
In exchange, nobody was laid off. And then the third thing was a group of incredibly generous donors came and gave us money restricted for basically payroll until September 15th. And so that was able to give security to all of us for until mid-September at least, just as a, and I think during this crisis, the not knowing is the thing that is crazy making, is really scary. So my hope is that we are able to kind of keep things together, and the AGO staff I know is working really, really hard now to engage the public. So yeah,
I agree. So it's almost the same in Montreal, because we are working also 80% until the very end of September, and it is very important to make this decision, because of course it would have been more simple just to lay off the majority of the staff. But after that is this question of value, because you want to keep all your people on the same boat, because we know that we are through a perfect storm, but we really want to go through. And now everybody will stay together. We can continue to work on these projects, and we can invent new business model. Because it's true that for us, with such private institution, we can see that our business model are really impacted, deeply impacted by this crisis. It's not at all the same with the 2008 crisis. Do you remember this crisis?
Yeah, I actually, I thought I'd never say this, but I was really glad I went through 2008 as a director, because although it was different, it was an economic crisis, and this is a health crisis that has economic ramifications. I think the skills that I learned during that period, like you have to have a team. You can't do this alone. You have to simply move to the next point in the right direction. And some days look really bad, but that's not an indication of what tomorrow is, because tomorrow can actually look pretty good. So those are some things I learned in 2008, and a sense of humor as well.
Yeah, it's always good for
you got it.
On an individual basis and social basis. Very good to laugh every day.
So tell me, Nathalie, you started studying sculpture. You decided relatively young that you wanted to be an art historian. You had a great peer group.
Not exactly that. I wanted to be an astronaut, but I'm
an
very
astronaut.
bad at math.
Okay.
Very, very bad. I'm really zero. So, always wanted to travel, to explore, etc. So I love to travel. I still would love to travel. Frankly, if tomorrow I do not work anymore in the museum, I will take my backpack and I will travel.
You're not going to be bored in retirement.
Oh, no, never. No. How could you be bored living such life? So, in fact, it's really, thanks to great people, great mentors, great teachers, that step by step, I decided to work in a museum. In fact, I passed my competition in order to be a curator, because in France, state is so important. You cannot be a curator without belonging to the administration. So I'm still stamped with the French administration for life.
Okay? There we go.
I belong to the French administration. So I decided to escape. This is rather unusual, because normally when you have this kind of competition, you stay until you're retired. But when I came here in Canada 20 years ago, I was really so impressed by this system, and I love it so much, because it's all about the entrepreneurship, creativity, and so I decided to stay here with my family, and very proud to be here in Canada, frankly.
And what point did you decide you wanted to be a museum director?
No, in fact, people decided for me. I did not decide it, because for me, I wanted to be a curator. I'm still, in my mind, I'm still a curator, but because I was chief curator, and I love to initiate projects. I love to create projects. So in fact, when you love project, you love action, and you want to lead your action. And great people, great mentors also, like Bernard Lamar, my former president chair, decided, you can be a director. You have the profile. I say, are you sure? Because of course
I'm often amazed when I see curators or educators, the ones who I think, oh, right, you should probably be a director. And it's apparent relatively early, right? That like, if you're a curator and you want to be writing books and you want to be being super scholarly, maybe not the best skill set if you have to be out 4 or 5 days a week, right, in the evening. But I'm always amazed at how you can kind of see it in some people. Like they're going to make great directors. So I think the next generation is going to be fantastic. I really do.
I think so. And I think that our system here is very good for young curators, because we give a lot of importance for the leadership, for creativity, etc. Yep. It's much easier in comparison with a national museum or national system I can see in other countries, especially in Europe. So you're right. And the young have so many things to say right now. They are full of ideas, full of values, full of criticism, full of everything.
There's a sense of urgency. Like, what do you mean you haven't done that yesterday? You know, it's like, exactly. Okay. Oh, hold on. But yeah, it's
I agree. But there is something to. Would you like to be a curator, or just to write a book at one point, sometime in your crazy life, or are you really focused?
No, so I'm very dyslexic, so writing is very hard for me. It's a lot of work. I also have a reasonably short attention span, and I love seeing other people succeed. So I'm maybe a little different, that I knew I wanted to be a director when I was in my first year of college, 18, 19. And then I decided to become an art historian as a curator in order to become a director. Right. So that was maybe a little backwards, but that
interesting. It's rather unusual, but maybe because I am a woman, and of course maybe I was a little bit more shy, and I underestimate myself, like many women in my generation. So anyway.
Yes, I think I may have been that stereotypical. I had no shortened sense of entitlement. I was like, sure, I'll do that, right? Completely naive, but I kind of, I do think the field is changing, but there's still a lot of work to be done, in particular in recognition of artists. Women artists tend to emerge in the public often when they're 70 or 80 years old, right? They've been working for 50 plus years, doing extraordinary work, and kind of the system validates women very late.
But what it's true that there is Sasha, as national Ottawa, but there are not so many women at the head of big institutions. Not so many, frankly. But,
Kaywen Feldman at the National Gallery in Washington. But yes, it's probably 2/3 men at the larger institutions.
Laurence Descartes in Orsay. Things are really improving, I think. Anyway, with the next generation, they don't have this kind of think or consideration, I think.
So I live in Toronto, you live in Montreal. What is one thing what are some things that you just love about Montreal? Why is it the best city to live in?
The best city, I don't know, but it's a very complex city, because it's not the most bilingual city, like in North America, but also the trilingual, because there is also Spanish. And I think that I'm really among different philosophies, coming from United States, America, Canada, this Anglophone philosophy, and also coming from France and Europe. And it makes this place very interesting, because we are really at the crossroads of those different philosophy, and there are so many issues or debate which are very, very relevant right now, considering, for example, the laicity word, which is really, really a bad word in the Anglophone word, which is understood in a different way in the Francophone word, or concerning the cultural appropriation, etc. So it makes the place super interesting, because we are really among different mindset, and so it makes you very stimulated. And I think that for me, I love to be in such place, because it's like if I have a different brain. I have my French, Francophone, Canadian, American, And each time, of course, if I want to say exactly the same thing, I will, I have to be very precise with my words, and it makes us more stimulated. I love this place for that. It's a super interesting place, rather unique, by the way.
I agree with you. I love Montreal. We used to, Will and I, my husband and I, used to live in Burlington, Vermont. So we would go up to Montreal, every several weeks. It was the big city. But I do feel like it's truly a unique place. Nobody says, well, Montreal is like ... The other city that has that is New Orleans, right? New Orleans is unique. It is New Orleans. It's not like any other place in the world. And I think both Montreal and New Orleans have that.
And also there is this kind of, it's a witty city. For me, it's a little bit like, San Francisco or Amsterdam, Barcelona. Barcelona, because we have those two languages. So I think that it's not super expensive. It's also a place where the culture is super, super important because of this francophone identity. Everybody has something to say about identity. In fact, and it is why the government invest so much money for artists, for helping artists, etc. And it's true that still now the city is not very expensive for the young artists. And I'm a vice president of the Canada Council for the Arts, so I'm the vice chair. And it's interesting because in the Canadian map, the cultural Canadian map, Montreal is very specific because you have 3 levels of institution. You have the big ones, like the OSM, Symphonic Orchestra, the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. Then you have this kind of middle companies, and also the very new one. And the fact that we have those 3 levels of cultural institutions make the place very alive. And it's especially true in Montreal. Well, I'm a great Montreal ambassador, but I love.
Of course. And you should hear me talk about Toronto when I'm outside of Toronto.
So what do you like about Toronto? Because
I mean, it's. I think Toronto is this fascinating mix of being. It's a massive city, right? And it's incredibly ambitious. It really is globally ambitious and in a great aspirational kind of way. Simultaneously, there is a very serious conversation about equity and social justice and fairness. So there's this usually when you have a city that's as ambitious as Toronto, you don't have those other conversations, right? And I like that tension between the two. I sometimes have described it as it's growing so quickly over the last decades. And, sometimes you meet a teenager who's like 6'2" or over 2 meters, but they're 14 years old. I kind of feel like Toronto's like that. It's young. It has no idea yet exactly how incredibly powerful and influential it could be. I love it when people come visit here now and are like, almost everybody says, I had no idea. Like they just had no idea, right? And so it means that you can take some risks, right? You can really change.
Exactly. But frankly, I think that our country, and it's not because I have my Canadian citizenship, but I think that Canada has so much to give and to bring to this new century. Because it's. I can find in Europe a great heritage, but sometimes it's very heavy. It's a very
it's a history.
Exactly, but here we are not also in United States. You know so much United States, and I think that Canada has such great values because it is a young country. So there is still some space in our brain for inventing a better future. And this better future is all about our togetherness, about multiculturalism, even the interculturalism, etc. And this is a brand. It's really we can see that now with this COVID because we have this system of healthcare, which is important, so important, so rare in the world.
I've also been really impressed by all 3 levels of government, where I mean, a shout out to the Ontario Public Service. I mean, I'm getting calls at like 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, somebody getting back to me, or here's some information that I think you need, or this is a direction. What do you think about it? Can we improve it? But the public service has been actually amazing in this crisis. And also that it actually seems that all three levels are having functional relationships with each other. Like they just, they're often different parties and different worldviews. There's a certain sense of a common, the common good. And so I'm really pleased by that. I am noticing that we have a whole bunch of questions. But before I go to those questions, I want to share something because I think one of your marked characteristics is your sense of humor. So I am going to share here for our audience, 1,000 people. One of the wonderful things about Nathalie is she sends me on my cell phones photographs. And so this is the Mona Lisa, who can't go and get her hair touched up. So that was a great one. Let's see, how do I go to the next page here? This is the next one. She sent me this on Easter. So these is the kind of the COVID Easter, the Easter bunnies with the, and then the final one she just sent me today. And so this is, because we're at 4:30, we're gonna take 10 minutes of questions, and then I'm gonna let you do whatever you do. And this just kind of cracked me up. The world is now Vegas. Everybody's losing money. It's acceptable to drink at all hours, and no one has any idea what day it is. And as this crisis goes on, I think it's important that we stay in touch with each other. So I really want to thank people for joining the conversation and just being part of the AGO Montreal community. And so let me go to some questions here. Let me do a second here to, I follow a number of artists online. Many are doing diaries of art while quarantined. Have you thought about whether there might be an opportunity in the midterm to exhibit quarantine art? It's a great question from Gail Kelly. So yes, you will see that AGO.ca is ramping up. It's gonna ramp up a lot. We have, over 50 artists working now on videos that we will be sharing with you. So on AGO.ca, but also on our social media, Facebook, Instagram. Yesterday we did a talk on Facebook. We did a 2-minute warning. We said, we're gonna do a talk in 2 minutes. The AGO started broadcasting and 600 people saw it. In 2 minutes, they jumped on. So that was, are you doing projects with artists right now?
Yes, we do a lot of webinar and also a conversation with artists, with our curators. So, of course, we have to support our artists, by the way, because it is so important. They are very vulnerable, especially now in this crisis.
I can't push that enough. Even if you're buying a work of art, and remember, just do it from a local artist, somebody you care about, even if it's just a drawing for $500, that actually makes a big difference right now. The AGO is pretty involved with that right now. We'll share more later on that, but institutions are under stress, but artists are under stress. And fundamentally, both your institution, our institution, is based on artists, right? We can't exist with they don't. Question from Francis Thomas. I'm aware that Nathalie Bondil initiated about 2 years ago an extremely innovative initiative to do a study and quantify the link between art and wellness.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, yes, of course. And it's especially relevant right now with this crisis. In fact, our love of beauty it's a very biological. When we see something beautiful and when we have this kind of aesthetic emotion, we have it is very good for our physically. So it is this kind of emotion, aesthetic emotion, who are studying with doctors. And I created a few years ago a committee, Art and Health Committee, which is presided by the chief scientist of Quebec. And we have many pilot projects on Alzheimer, eating disorders, etc. And they are scientific projects. And in fact, we also 2 years ago initiated the very first medical prescription with the Association of the Francophone Doctors of Canada. So you go to see your doctor, and your doctor can give you a prescription for the Montreal Museum of Fine Art visit. And in fact, for all of us, because we love art, we are art amateurs, so we know that there is a great tool for healing ourselves with art, but for many people, it's not at all obvious.
Yeah.
So it's like if we give a key to those people, donc, for being, for helping their wellness or their health. So the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts donc, is also one of the very first to have hired an art therapist full time. Yeah. And now with this COVID crisis, we have many art therapist studios online, like with the museum.
And what is your website, Nathalie, so people can go to it?
It's www.mmfa.com, something like that.
Okay, great. Okay, there we go. One of the things also is that one of the big wellness issues is actually loneliness, right? People can alone. And art museums are one place where you can go and it's completely okay to go alone, right? You can meet people there, they're guided tours, and you just feel part of the social fabric, right? And if you are alone in the world, it's a great place that you can go. Here's some more questions. Do you see museums and cultural organizations partnering even more closely in the coming months? Personally, I meet with Josh at the ROM probably 3 times a week on the phone. I'm also the larger cultural institutions. We meet every Friday at 4:30. You know why? So we can have a cocktail halfway through the meeting and just enjoy each other's company, but also share information. And Nathalie and I got closer to the crisis. How do you keep your staff on? So that question from Mark Jordan is absolutely. Are you in a good network in Montreal as well?
Oh yes, I think that I have connections with museums all around the world every day. So we can really see that there is such a solidarity among museums, and in fact, it's much better than before. And I think that thanks to this crisis, our relation will be even better tomorrow. And also because we'll have to help ourselves, because it will be maybe more difficult to have blockbusters or to have those huge or expensive exhibitions. So certainly we'll have to rethink our business model, especially for exhibition. And so it's another opportunity to work more together.
A good example is Curtis, who is a guy on our team here at the AGO in the exhibitions department. He spoke to Christy, who's head of exhibitions. And what they're trying to work on are the protocols for virtual couriers. So what that means is if we send a Monet to Paris, right, for an exhibition, we actually send somebody along with it, a courier. It's super expensive, but they're conservators usually to watch the installation and make sure the work is treated properly. Well, it's very, very expensive to do that. So if we could have virtual couriers, then we could perhaps work together and have the safety there without sending a person, for example. So how you do that, it's just, we don't know yet, but it's a good example of kind of how this crisis has provoked innovation. We have a bunch of questions here. How do I see art during this time? One way to do it is buy a work of art from an artist, right? And I see it all the time. Both Nathalie and I were talking about how much we enjoy the art we have at home, particularly in this period. The other is public sculpture. I think both cities have extraordinary public sculpture around. And as long as you're social distancing and following good medical advice, learn about the public sculpture. I think you'll find the public sculpture is better, more interesting, more complex than you probably thought it was. Because often people go by and don't think, oh, right, there's an Anish Kapoor down there. Let's see. Do you have any final words for us, Nathalie?
Final words.
Do you want to tell us anything? Do you want to share anything?
No, just, yeah, you're right. Don't just buy a work of art and look
just buy a work of art by an artist,
just
right?
enjoy every day.
Yeah.
Art therapy for almost free.
And the other option is you can make art. So one of the things we have on our website is, how to do drawing and things like that. So if you're home alone, creativity is a fantastic way to make us feel a little better. So I'm going to slowly wrap it up here. I want to thank Nathalie very much for joining us. And I want to remind people that we're going to do something similar with Glenn Lowry, who's a friend both of Nathalie and myself, who is the director of the Museum of Modern Art. And of course, he used to be the director here. Do go to our website. We're going to have a lot of programming like this, and I hope you enjoy it. So thank you very, very much, Nathalie, and have a good afternoon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stephan. Bye.
Bye-bye.